Now, our panel here has a title that is impossible to cover in a brief period of time: The Road to Freedom and Prosperity, Abolish the IRS, Privatize Social Security and Welfare, End Unfunded Public Pension Liabilities. But we'll do our best. I'll dispatch the Abolish the IRS right now. Peter Ferrara and I have written about this in the Washington Times recently. And all you have to do is follow the Constitution that says Congress shall lay and collect taxes, to know that the IRS is a misplaced agency under the president. It should be under the Congress, and it will help us to reform the tax code in a proper direction if we get that done. Because we have on our panel one of the leading experts in healthcare and Obamacare in America, and in light of the recent Supreme Court decision on this issue, we'll consider the future of healthcare in America that will restore freedom and prosperity. And here to bring us that message, our first speaker is John Goodman. John is a longtime friend, president of the Goodman Institute, and is generally considered to be the father of health savings accounts and a national authority, of course, on Obamacare. Most recently, he is the author of A Better Choice: Healthcare Solutions for America. This book, it's available at the Independent Institute site. Please get a copy. It's our pleasure to introduce to you John Goodman. John?
Thank you, Lou. It's been 5 years since the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And in all that time, Republicans in Congress have not even once come together to propose an alternative to Obamacare. By next spring, it will have been 6 years. That's primary season. And I'm betting that even then, they will not have an alternative to Obamacare. By election day, it'll be 6.5 years. And all that time, I'm betting they still will not have an alternative. But even if they never have an alternative, Obamacare is on a collision course with reality. There are certain really bad things that are going to happen, and they're going to force Congress and the president to do something. And the worst is the mandate that forces you to buy a particular kind of health insurance whose cost is going to grow through time at a much faster rate than your income. Now, you don't have to be an economist or mathematician to know that if you are being forced to buy something and its cost is growing faster than your income, it's going to be crowding out all of your other consumption. In fact, on the path we're now on, by the time college students get to the retirement age, all they will have is health care. They'll have nothing to eat, nothing to wear, no place to live, but they'll have really, really great health care. Now, President Obama didn't create this problem, but Obamacare locks us onto that path. And meanwhile, there are 3 global budgets that protect the federal government from exposure to this problem. As part of the Affordable Care Act, and almost nobody knows this, but it's right there in the law, Medicare is going to grow at the rate of growth of gross domestic product forever. Also, Medicaid hospital spending is going to grow at the same rate of growth of the economy forever. And then after 2018, the government subsidies and the exchanges, that also will grow at the rate of growth of the economy forever. Meanwhile, healthcare will be growing at twice that rate. So healthcare is going like this, the government's contribution is going like this. That means more and more shifting of the burden to the private sector. And I would just submit to you that cannot continue. We're going to have to do something different. And then in the exchanges, we have what I think is a very unstable marketplace. And I can easily see a death spiral occurring, which only sick people are there, and the premiums go so high that no one can afford them. And if that happens, the government will have to take it over, and we'll have one more huge government health care program. But even if it doesn't happen, in the meantime, all the insurers are facing very, very perverse incentives. And their incentives are to attract the healthy and avoid the sick. And then after enrollment, their incentives are to overprovide to the healthy and underprovide to the sick. They're running away from sick people. And the insurers have become convinced that the healthy buy only on price. And that's why we're getting a race to the bottom on the exchanges. These insurance companies are putting out fees to doctors and hospitals as low as they can get them, sometimes lower than the Medicaid fees, and taking any doctor or facility who will accept those fees. And they almost always leave out the best doctors and the best hospitals. And why are they doing this? So they can get their premium down, because they're convinced that the healthy buy on price. And they're convinced that anybody who looks at their network, I mean, if you go through and try to find out who's in their network, they don't have to know what your particular illness is. They just automatically know you're probably not someone they want in their pool. This is going on. It's getting worse and worse. So as the premiums skyrocket, the quality of the networks gets worse and worse. Now, probably our biggest problem with conservatives in Congress is probably also a problem we have right here in this room. And that is, conservatives and libertarians in general do not have a good idea of what a free enterprise healthcare system would look like, and they don't have any idea of how we practically might get there. So come join our session this afternoon, and it will all be devoted to how we replace Obamacare with something better. And by the way, we need to replace it. It's not just good enough to repeal it. We need to get to something better. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, John. Next, our good friend and colleague in many articles on taxes and spending, Peter Ferrara. He was domestic policy advisor to Ronald Reagan and a deputy AG under George Bush I. He has written a new book, Power to the People, a copy of which is available at Heartland. Yes. Heartland published this, and so I'd like to introduce Peter Ferrara. Peter?
The book is Power to the People, The New Road to Freedom and Prosperity for the Poor, Seniors, and those most in need of the world's best health care. The theme of the book is positive, populist, pro-growth entitlement reform. So it tells you how to reform every entitlement program: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, welfare. But after these reforms, the poor are better off, seniors are better off, people get better health care than they can today under Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare. But the key to for our purposes is that this is a roadmap so that after a generation, if you adopt these reforms, federal spending will be half what it would be otherwise under current trends. So this is a roadmap for radically reducing government, and it's meant to present this in a positive, populist way that can be, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel here to success with these reforms, because these are going to be politically appealing. So there's three big ideas in the book. One is personal savings, investment, and insurance accounts for Social Security, and this is for just the same system that was adopted in Chile to enormous success 30 years ago. And the workers would have the freedom to take their taxes and save and invest it on their own in their all personal accounts. The vision is to expand the option until working people have the freedom to choose private accounts for all the benefits financed by the payroll tax. So savings and investment for retirement benefits, life insurance for survivors' benefits, disability insurance for disability benefits, even health care for Medicare. The key to us is that this doesn't just trim the growth of benefits. You have all these experts who are sitting around thinking, oh, if we just change this formula, the benefits will grow more slowly. The expenditures will grow more slowly. But under this reform, all the spending for Social Security, for Medicare, everything financed by the payroll tax, is taken off the federal budget altogether and put into the private sector. That alone is the biggest reduction in government spending in world history, just resulting from that reform. At the same time, middle-class people can retire as millionaires under these reforms at just standard long-term market investment returns. The bottom line is that a lifetime of savings and investment will always result in more than a lifetime of no savings and investment, and that is what Social Security is pure tax and redistribution, and no savings and investment anywhere in the system at all. So seniors will get, under these personal accounts, they get higher benefits, not lower benefits. They choose their own retirement age. Each one chooses their own retirement age. The government doesn't impose one uniform retirement age on everyone. And so for all these reasons, seniors will be much better off with the personal accounts. Of course, the savings they accumulate in these accounts, they can leave to their children or other heirs as they choose. The second big idea is welfare reform. In 1996, we had an enormous success with the entitlement reform of just one federal welfare program, the old aid to families with dependent children program. We followed the idea of Ronald Reagan and his chief welfare advisor, Robert Carlson, who I worked for directly in the Reagan White House. They took the funds the federal government is spending in that program, and they sent it back to the states in a block grant. There was a fixed, finite block grant. So it said, okay, you, the state, now control this program, but if you spend more, you bear 100% of the cost. We're only going to give you so much money, and that's it. If you spend less, then you get to keep 100% of the savings. Under those transformed incentives, within a few years, 2/3 of the people that were dependent on that program, many of whom had been dependent on it for years and years, 10 years, 15 years, people used to stay on AFDC for a lifetime. 2/3 of those left the program. They went to work. Academic studies documented that they had 25% higher income than they had dependent on the program. For the program, after 10 years, federal spending on the program was 50% less than it would have been otherwise, based on prior trends. Now, the problem is that was just one program. We have dozens and dozens of more federal means-tested welfare programs. We need to block grant them all back to the states, set the savings of trillions of dollars, let the states each decide how to best help the poor with those funds, and the states can do a much better job, and they've been proven that they can do a better job than the federal government. In fact, what I advocate is the states each adopt a work-fair safety net so that all public assistance for the poor is tied to showing up for work first. If you don't show up for work first, then we assume you got everything taken care of, no more public assistance. So that's the way to address welfare, and under that kind of system, poverty actually would be eliminated. We talk about that in the book, and exactly how. And so there's a book signing at 10 o'clock. Come in, you can get a copy of the book, and you can see how to cut the federal government in half in a generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And as you know, the key to survival of our nation and reducing the size of government relative to the private sector and right-sizing government is really the key to the future, is that we have to grow our way out of this problem. And one of the ways is proper tax policy. Recently, Peter and I had an article in the Investor Business Daily on total abolition of the federal corporate income tax. That would have a dramatic effect on jobs and capital restoration here in the United States, and is going to be key to the future. We know that Obama would never sign such a thing, but it frames the issue for the 2012 election. As Peter mentioned, book signing will occur at 10 to 10:30 for all three of these gentlemen. So take a look and join with them and buy their books and get them personally signed. Our next speaker is Lawrence McQuillan. He's the director of the Center on Entrepreneurial Innovation, that's a mouthful, at the Independent Institute. He's been the author of numerous books and articles, and most recently, he has the book California Dreaming, about how to fix the runaway public employee pension problem. California is among the worst. Illinois, of course, is even worse than California, if anything is possible. So here to talk to us about this issue and give us some direction is Lawrence McQuillan.
Thank you, Lou. So I'm here to talk about another dismal problem facing the country. I think we should call this panel the dismal panel. But the big mess that I'm going to talk about is the public employee pension crisis in the United States. Nationally, state and local governments have an unfunded public pension debt of about $4.7 trillion. That's with a T, trillion, $4.7 trillion, all in looking at state and local governments. Some states, as Lou mentioned, are worse than others. Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas have huge problems, but probably the granddaddy of them all is California, which has an unfunded public pension debt of $750 billion, according to the best estimates out there. And keep in mind, this is money that should be in the bank today to pay for promises and benefits already earned. I mean, this money should be in the bank and already earning compounded interest year after year, but isn't, and now politicians are scrambling to come up with the money. So how did we get into this mess? It was pretty similar across all states, and that is that for decades, politicians increased benefits basically to win votes and campaign contributions from the employees and their family and the public employee unions. And in exchange for these higher benefits, they got votes, but of course the bill eventually comes due 20, 30, 40 years down the road when people retire. So most of these politicians are long gone out of office when the bill comes due, and now we're stuck with this debt. And as they were increasing benefits, what they were doing was lowballing the contributions. So not enough money was being put into the funds given the excessive rate of benefit increases, basically because if they lowballed the contributions, that freed up money that they could use for other government programs. And they knew that they'd be long out of office when the bill came due. For example, every legislator that voted for the biggest pension increase in the history of the state of California, this was 1999, every single legislator that voted for that is now out of office, but now the bill is due. Also, it was almost a total bipartisan approval of this pension benefit increase. Only 2 legislators voted against it. So if you look across the country, this really cuts across red states and blue states. I mean, politicians played fast and loose with the pension plan, and now we're stuck with the results of that. In terms of the solution, I have basically 6 solutions in my book, California Dreaming, which I'll be signing at, I think, about 10:30 today. And, but the 3 top ones are freeze the defined benefit plans that are currently in place. As of a certain date, just freeze them. People can't contribute anymore to them. And then transition everybody over to a reasonable 401k plan. And the savings that you would generate from that transition, you could use to pay off the accumulated debt. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, we didn't get into this problem overnight, so we're not going to solve it overnight. But I show in the book that California, for example, if it went to a 401k, it would save more than $6 billion a year that it could use to pay off the debt that's already been accumulated in about 20 to 25 years. So about 1 generation. So at least you're not kicking the can too far down the road. And if we don't solve this problem, I mean, our kids and grandkids are going to get stuck with this bill, which they already have to a certain extent, but we're going to be passing on this burden. They didn't ask for it. They didn't vote for it. They didn't vote for the level of benefits or the level of government spending or the government employees that are earning these pension benefits. So I think it's important that our generation step up and fix this problem today so we don't have to pass it on any further and use our kids as piggy banks to solve our problems. And by making this shift to a 401k, we actually generate the savings that we can use then to pay off this debt. The shift would be easier in some states than others, no doubt about it, because of certain either legal interpretations or constitutional provisions. So it wouldn't be easy in every state, but at least this is a roadmap that would work across the country if implemented. Thank you.
How does your reform
how's it
save
save
money?
money?
Because right now, in certain parts of the state of California, for example, the contribution rates are above 50% of salary. So assume somebody's making, I'll just pick a number, $100,000 a year. The government agency, all in, is putting another $50,000 into the pension fund in some parts of California. It's a 50% contribution in order to pay for the normal costs, the current costs, but also to pay off the debt long term. So, so even most 401k plans in the private sector are between 2 to 4%. In my book, I propose a 10% 401k. So I picked the highest 401k that's currently out there. Michigan, for example, and Alaska both use 401ks. So this is not pie in the sky. I mean, this is working. It's been proven to work. But even if you pick the highest rate amongst any states that's using currently a 401k, the state of California would still save, going forward, $6 billion a year at least, that they could then use to pay off the accumulated debt.
Yes, please. One more question. How do the federal pensions compare to state and local? Repeat the question so that,
Yeah, how do the federal pensions compare? I mean, the federal pensions are in a better condition, actually, because there's more rigid oversight rules. State and local government pension plans are free pretty much to do whatever they want, and that's really what's allowed them to get into this situation they're in. I mean, if the private sector fund managers did what they do in the private sector, they would be put in jail because there's a lot more oversight of private and the federal. The federal side actually has a really good 401k plan. It's called the Thrift Savings Plan. It would actually be a good model for states to pick up because it has various default rules and things that are very good in terms of trying to reduce the risk on employees. So ironically, the federal government actually has a better model in some respects for a 401k, although that's a 401k on top of a defined benefit and everything else. So.
All right, we're essentially out of time, but one more question quickly, please.
What's happened to the high PKB? I understand the House is under the chopping block. Is that true?
She's asking about the board that's set up under Obamacare that will enforce Medicare's growing no faster than the rate of growth of the economy. The House is about to vote to abolish that, or already has, but it's going nowhere because it probably won't survive the Senate, and even if it did, Obama would veto it. Let me say that I think that is a wrong thing for conservatives and libertarians to focus on. We do need to slow the rate of growth of Medicare, and Congress by itself won't be able to do it. We need to focus on bigger game if we really want to replace Obamacare.
We want to thank our panelists and thank all of you, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the later panels. You bet.